It was the kind of love story the internet couldn't get enough of, bold, unfiltered, larger than life. She was a BBW adult film star, draped in designer labels and dripping confidence, her curves and charisma captivating thousands. He was her streetwise, ride-or-die boyfriend, the man who showered her with extravagant gifts and defended her with the ferocity of a lion. Together, they flaunted their love for the world to see, their social media pages a non-stop reel of luxury, lust, and devotion. But behind the viral clips and breathless captions, behind the matching tattoos and money-flaunting antics, something darker festered. Love twisted into jealousy. Passion curdled into control. And in the shadows of their lavish lifestyle, the cracks in their perfect image deepened, setting the stage for a crime so brutal, so shocking, that it left even their most loyal fans speechless. What happens when the fairy tale collapses under the weight of its own performance? When pride and betrayal ignite like gasoline to an open flame. Tonight, we unravel the story of how a love that burned so hot became an inferno of rage. Before we dive in, hit that like button and subscribe for more chilling stories of love, crime, and betrayal. Tamika Rochelle Mays didn't just make a living, she made a spectacle. As Ebony Temptress, she commanded attention with every post, every video, every click of her long, manicured nails against a designer purse. She had built an empire off her curves, her confidence, and her ability to make people feel like they knew her. She let her fans into her world, expensive hauls from high-end boutiques, late-night rants about love and loyalty, and just enough glimpses of her wild romance to keep them begging for more. At the center of that romance was Devon D'Lo Merritt, a man who didn't need a job to have money. D'Lo had a presence, the kind of street charisma that made people either respect him or fear him. No one really knew how he funded his lifestyle, just that he always had the freshest sneakers, the flyest outfits, and a pocket full of cash. But to Tamika, he was more than just her man. He was her protector, the one who stood between her and the leeches, the users, the jealous nobodies who thought they could bring her down. Their love was a show, but it was also real. Too real. The kind of love that felt like a drug, intoxicating, addictive, and dangerous in the wrong dose. They fought hard, loved harder, and let their followers in just enough to feel like they were part of the madness. One day, Tamika would post a photo of them draped in designer outfits, captioned "Forever My King." The next, she'd be throwing cryptic shade on Twitter about loyalty and betrayal. Fans ate it up, dissecting every post, every comment, every hint of drama. But what they didn't see, the part that never made it to Instagram, was how quickly their passion could turn toxic. The accusations. The yelling. The sudden disappearances followed by expensive gifts and extravagant apologies. Tamika knew D'Lo had a wandering eye, just like D'Lo knew she thrived on attention. It was a volatile mix, fueled by money, lust, and a shared need to always be on top. Still, no one, no matter how closely they followed, no matter how many times they zoomed in on her Instagram stories or read between the lines of her tweets, could have predicted what would happen in that Atlanta hotel room. No one knew that the unfiltered couple, the internet's wildest love story, was about to take its darkest turn yet. Tamika never let anyone see her sweat. No matter how bad things got, she kept up appearances, lashes done, hair laid, designer bag on her arm, always looking like money, even when the money wasn't hitting like before. But behind the filters and flexing, the pressure was mounting. Her industry was changing. New girls were coming in, taking up space, getting the kind of attention that used to belong to her. The checks weren't what they used to be, and for the first time in years, Tamika felt something she hadn't in a long time: fear. Devon didn't believe in fear. As far as he was concerned, the world belonged to the ones who took what they wanted. And he had always taken. He took respect, he took loyalty, and most of all, he took control. He let Tamika think she ran things because she paid for the trips, the shoes, the jewelry. But deep down, they both knew the truth: without him, she was just another chick trying to stay relevant. He was the one who made her feel untouchable. He was the one who could break her with a look, a smirk, a whisper in her ear reminding her that no matter how much money she had, she still belonged to him. Their fights had always been loud, ugly, but thrilling in their own way. A war neither of them wanted to win because making up was always worth the battle. But lately, the fights had started to feel different. Tamika was getting tired, asking questions she never used to ask. Where's the money going? Who was that girl in your comments? Devon brushed her off like always, but this time, she wasn't just venting for the internet. She was serious. The Grand Majestic was supposed to be a fresh start. A weekend to shut the world out and remind each other why they couldn't let go. Tamika booked the penthouse suite, made sure everything was perfect, champagne, silk sheets, the scent of luxury candles filling the air. But as soon as they checked in, she felt it. The shift. Devon was distant, scrolling his phone, barely looking up as she draped herself across the bed, waiting for him to notice her. When he did, his eyes weren't filled with the usual hunger. Instead, there was something else. A coldness. A calculation. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just another fight waiting to happen. This wasn't another storm they could ride out. The power had shifted. And for the first time, Tamika was starting to wonder if love was even part of the equation anymore. The night had started like so many before, drinks flowing, cameras flashing, a perfect illusion of passion and power. Tamika had put on her best, slipping into a tight designer dress that hugged her curves in all the right places, her makeup flawless, her smile bright enough to blind. She wanted to remind Devon what he had, what he was at risk of losing. She had spent $3,500 on this suite, high thread count sheets, a skyline view, the kind of luxury that screamed we made it. She expected gratitude. Appreciation. Maybe even an apology for the way he'd been acting lately. But Devon never did what was expected. Instead, he leaned back in his chair at the hotel bar, swirling his whiskey in the glass like he had all the time in the world. His arm draped over the back of the chair, fingers tapping against the leather. He wasn't looking at Tamika. He was looking at them. Two women standing by the bar, young, fresh, the kind of newness that had been haunting Tamika lately. She recognized their type, aspiring influencers, hungry for attention, eager to be claimed by a man with money. Tamika watched as Devon tilted his head toward them, grinning. Then he waved them over. Her stomach twisted. Not tonight. Not after everything. The two women sauntered over, all fake smiles and eager eyes. Devon leaned in, saying something low, something Tamika couldn't hear over the music. The women giggled. Tamika's blood boiled. Devon turned to her, that damn smirk on his face, the one that always made her feel small. Relax, Ma. I just want to see what they can do for us. The words hit her like a slap. She had spent years proving her worth. Built a career off her confidence. And yet, here she was, once again reduced to an option, a joke. Something inside her snapped. Are you serious right now? She hissed, voice shaking. Devon chuckled, taking a sip of his drink. Damn, don't start that insecure shit, T. We just having fun. Tamika grabbed her purse and stormed out of the bar, heels clicking furiously against the marble floor. She could hear Devon behind her, laughing under his breath, not even bothering to run after her. By the time he made it back to the suite, she was already there, pacing, fury radiating off her. You disrespect me like that? She spat the moment he walked in. After everything I've done for you? Devon shrugged, tossing his phone onto the bed. Man, it ain't that deep. Tamika's hands balled into fists. Not that deep. She pointed around the room. I paid for all this. I've been paying for everything. And you got the nerve to bring some random bitches up in my face. He chuckled again, that lazy, taunting laugh. You act like I asked you to pay. You do it 'cause you want to. 'Cause you need me. Let's be real, without me, you just another washed-up star trying to buy love. The slap came before she even realized what she was doing. A sharp, stinging crack across his jaw. Devon barely flinched. He just smiled, his tongue running over his teeth. That's all you got? The rage burned hotter. Fuck you, Devon. Already did, he shot back. And so did half the internet. Tamika lunged, shoving him with both hands. Get out. You ain't kicking me out of a room I basically paid for. You paid for nothing. Devon grabbed his phone, headed for the door. You ain't nothing but a trick with a camera, he muttered. I never loved you. You just paid the bills. That was it. The breaking point. Tamika's hand flew to her purse. Her fingers wrapped around the grip of her pink .380. Before she could think, before she could breathe, it was out. The first shot hit his shoulder. Devon staggered back, eyes wide, hand clutching his arm. You crazy bee. The second shot silenced him. The third sent him crashing to the floor. Tamika kept shooting. 12 times. Years of humiliation, of betrayal, of swallowing her pride for a man who never deserved it, each bullet carried a piece of her pain. The final shot landed right between his eyes. Silence. The scent of gunpowder filled the room, mixing with the faint trace of expensive cologne and spilled whiskey. Tamika stood there, her breathing ragged, her hand still gripping the gun, her ears ringing. Devon lay motionless, his blood seeping into the plush carpet, the life draining from him as quickly as the love had. The unfiltered couple, the internet's wildest love story, had just ended in the most unfiltered way possible. The flashing lights from police cruisers painted the hotel's exterior in eerie shades of red and blue. Inside the Grand Majestic, chaos had erupted. Hotel guests peeked out from their rooms, whispers spreading through the hallways. Some pulled out their phones, recording the scene, eager to be the first to upload the latest tragedy to the internet. When the hotel security team reached the suite, they found Tamika Rochelle Mays standing in the middle of the blood-splattered room, frozen in place. Her expensive dress was ruined, red stains soaking the fabric, splattered across her trembling hands. The pink .380 was still in her grip, the metal hot from use. Ma'am, drop the weapon. She didn't even blink. Her eyes were locked onto Devon's motionless body. The life had drained from him, his once arrogant smirk now replaced with empty, glassy eyes. His body, twisted and contorted on the plush hotel carpet, looked nothing like the man she had spent years chasing, fighting for, loving despite the pain. Ma'am, the officer repeated, stepping forward. Put the gun down. Her fingers loosened, and the firearm clattered to the floor. The moment the cuffs clicked around her wrists, reality set in. I gave that man everything, she murmured, her voice hoarse, almost detached from her own body. And he took me for a joke. They led her out of the suite, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. Down in the lobby, the cameras were already waiting. Flashbulbs erupted, voices shouting over one another. Tamika. What happened? Did you kill Devon in cold blood? Do you have any regrets? She didn't answer. She didn't cry. She just walked forward, head high, face blank. By the time she reached the precinct, the internet had already turned the tragedy into spectacle. Her mugshot spread like wildfire. Eyes lined with smeared makeup. Lips slightly parted, as if she were still processing what had happened. It was the face of a woman who had lost everything and yet, somehow, still refused to break. Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok became battlegrounds. #FreeTamika flooded timelines. She snapped. Every woman has a breaking point. Devon did this to himself. He played too many games. She's a queen, and they want to take her down for defending herself. But then there were the others. #Justice for Devon gained traction just as quickly. She's a murderer, simple as that. He didn't deserve to die over some petty argument. Imagine if the roles were reversed, y'all wouldn't be screaming free him. Her OnlyFans and subscription sites were suspended within hours. Her accounts, once filled with lavish spending, sultry photos, and bold opinions, became crime scene archives. Old tweets resurfaced, dissected, twisted. Every past argument between her and Devon was now a clue, proof that this moment had been inevitable. News networks ran with the story, from adult film star to killer, the fall of Tamika Mays. Ex-friends popped up on interviews. "I saw this coming," one former associate claimed. Tamika was always dramatic. She loved too hard, but she had a dark side. "I knew Devon," another chimed in. "He wasn't a saint, but he ain't deserve that." Even those who had never met them suddenly had opinions. Social media influencers made reaction videos. TikTok psychotherapists diagnosed her from a single mugshot. Meanwhile, inside the cold, gray walls of the county jail, Tamika sat on a metal bench, staring at her hands. The blood had been scrubbed away, but she could still feel it. A female officer approached. "You got a call." Tamika rose, moving mechanically. She picked up the phone, pressing it to her ear. A familiar voice spoke on the other end. Soft, hesitant. "Tamika, what happened?" "Her mother." Tamika closed her eyes, gripping the receiver tighter. "Mama," she whispered. A pause. Then a sigh. "I told you that man wasn't no good for you." Tamika let out a bitter chuckle, her first real emotion since the gunshots rang out. "I know," she admitted. Silence stretched between them, heavy with words unspoken. Her mother finally asked, "Baby, what do we do now?" Tamika exhaled. She didn't have an answer. The courtroom was packed to capacity, a gallery filled with reporters, former colleagues, social media influencers, and people who had never met Tamika Rochelle Mays but now felt personally invested in her fate. Some had once idolized her, subscribing to her content, envying her lavish lifestyle. Others had always disapproved of her, condemning her career choices, her social media feuds, and now, her crime. But regardless of where they stood, they all wanted one thing, a front-row seat to the spectacle. Tamika sat at the defendant's table, her expression unreadable. Her once flawless hair was now neatly pulled back in a tight bun. Her makeup, usually bold and dramatic, was absent. She looked smaller, less like the confident woman who had dominated screens and social feeds, and more like someone stripped down to her bare humanity. The prosecution wasted no time tearing into her character. "This is a woman who has always used power to control those around her," the lead prosecutor, Jonathan Hargrove, declared, pacing before the jury. "She used money to manipulate. She used sex to dominate. And when that wasn't enough, when she realized she was losing control, she turned to violence." He gestured toward the jury, his voice steady but firm. 12 shots. "Ladies and gentlemen, she didn't fire in self-defense. She didn't fire out of fear. She fired out of fury. Out of humiliation. Out of the need to show Devon Watts that she still had the final say. That she would never be played." Tamika's defense attorney, Charisse Daniels, was just as fiery. "My client was a victim of emotional and psychological abuse for years," she countered. "She was manipulated, degraded, and gaslit by a man who thrived on breaking her down piece by piece. Devon Watts weaponized love against her, knowing she would keep coming back, knowing he could push her past her limits without consequences." She turned to the jury, voice heavy with conviction. "Yes, Tamika Mays pulled that trigger. Yes, she fired multiple shots. But let's talk about why. Let's talk about the years of betrayal, humiliation, and manipulation that led her to that moment. Devon Watts didn't just die that night, he set the stage for his own demise long before they ever checked into that hotel room. The trial dragged on for weeks. Former friends and associates were called to testify. Some painted Tamika as a generous, loyal woman who had simply fallen for the wrong man. Others described her as hot-tempered, impulsive, and obsessive. The most damning piece of evidence, however, was the audio recording from that night, captured by the hotel's security system just outside their suite. The courtroom fell silent as the recording played. Devon's voice, dripping with disdain. "You ain't nothing but a trick with a camera." A single gunshot rang out in the audio, sending chills through the courtroom. Devon, stumbling, voice strained with pain. "You just paid the bills." Another gunshot. Then another. Then another. By the time the 12th shot echoed through the speakers, many in the courtroom looked visibly shaken. A few jurors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Tamika stared down at the table, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. When the prosecution rested, they made their final argument clear. This was not a crime of passion. This was an execution. The jury deliberated for 3 hours before returning with their verdict. Guilty. First-degree murder. Life without the possibility of parole. The moment the words left the judge's lips, the courtroom erupted. Some gasped. Others cheered. Reporters scrambled to break the news first. Tamika sat still, absorbing the weight of her sentence. No reaction. No tears. As the bailiffs moved in to take her away, a swarm of reporters gathered outside the courthouse, cameras flashing, microphones extended. "Tamika, any final words?" One shouted as she was led toward the transport van. For the first time since the trial began, she lifted her head, eyes locking onto the nearest camera. Her lips curled into the faintest smirk. "At least now," she murmured, "he can't play me no more." Then she turned away, disappearing into the waiting van, leaving behind a world that would debate her story for years to come. In the end, Tamika and Devon's story wasn't one of love, it was a war. A battle for dominance disguised as passion, fueled by ego, and doomed from the start. They lived in a cycle of manipulation, breaking each other down piece by piece, until there was nothing left but resentment and rage. Devon thought he could push Tamika past her limits without consequences. Tamika thought she could buy love and loyalty with money and gifts. Neither was willing to walk away. Neither was willing to surrender. And when pride and power became more important than sanity, the inevitable happened. Was Tamika the villain in this story, or was she just another woman caught in the trap of emotional abuse? Was Devon truly the manipulator, or simply a man who never took her love seriously? 1. Tragic ending. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story left you speechless, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more real-life stories of love, crime, and betrayal.